Okay. All right.
So sorry.
That's all right. It's kind of like the way we are these days, you know? We just do the best we can with what we've got. And I liked it that the sign on my computer kept saying, "You can't unmute. You can't unmute." So here we are anyway on the final day of our 2-week adapted shuso hosen, ango, and retreat. You know, our summer ango with Mukei Shomon was interrupted by reality. The Delta virus. What could we do? We had plans. I was already packing my bags. As Roshi Joshin said, we took the lemons and we made lemonade. All the other teachers reminded us of the teachings from the kitchen that helped us make our way through this time. Not the teachings from an exalted mountaintop or a dark cave, but from the kitchen, the humble place where we make sustenance for ourselves and for others. And of course, in this retreat, we have been working with Dogen's masterpiece, Instructions from the Cook. I hope you've had a chance to read it, and if you haven't, you can still find it on our website. I encourage you to read it. It's a wonderful text. And as Shinryu Roshi said, if we follow Dogen's instructions, we realize that we can construct a temple out of the simplest things. Right now, you've constructed a temple out of the space that you're in right now. We constructed a temple out of a Zoom meeting. We can construct a temple even, as Roshi Shinryu said, out of ourselves, our very bodies. And then Miyoko Roshi spoke the following day, saying everything, no matter how small, is important in our lives and in the kitchen. Everything, no matter how small, a detail, is important to the whole meal. When we pay attention, we manifest skillful actions. And finally, Ryotan Roshi reminded us of that wonderful encounter that Dogen had with the cook. The simplicity of the statement, others are not myself. We could say that's a statement for all of us. When we see a challenge, a need, let's not look around for an other to do it, but instead let us take on the challenge that's right in front of us. And that's just our life. That's just our life. So, you know, I suspect that when our shuso, Mukei Shomon, suggested the instructions for the cook for the study of this ango, he did have in mind both the old and the new. The old is the text from Dogen that we've heard about this week. And the new, or somewhat new, is the book by Bernie Glassman and Rick Fields, which is also entitled Instructions for the Cook. Here's the book. And in that book, there are very contemporary explorations of Dogen's texts. In it, Bernie offers us a way to live in contemporary society and how we can offer our best meal. He tells the story of his own widening vision of the Zen cook in today's world. In fact, you could kind of say that Bernie's whole life was a version of the teachings in Dogen's instructions to the cook. You know, I'm talking about Bernie Glassman because he was my transmission teacher. I worked with him for several years after Mayuzumi Roshi passed. And Bernie, as he liked to be called in his later years, had already started the Greyston Bakery when I began to work with him. And he started that bakery initially simply to subsidize the Zen community of New York, where they were established in a lovely estate in Riverdale, New York. So it was a way to keep the Zen community going in this rather luxurious surroundings in Riverdale. But very quickly, Bernie witnessed the suffering he saw around him, particularly the bakery, which was located in Yonkers, a much poorer community. And he moved his whole community to Yonkers. They left Riverdale and decided that the center and he himself would dedicate themselves to working for the homeless there in Yonkers. So when I first met Bernie, before I began to study with him, he was wearing a work shirt, a rakusu, and a hard hat. That was Bernie. And he was in the middle of constructing new housing for workers that he'd hired in the bakery and for various homeless in the neighborhood. So you may have noticed in our service dedication after the Heart Sutra, we dedicate the chanting to the memory of layman Bernie Glassman. You may think that he was always a layman, but for 40 years, he was an ordained monk. He wore the robes. It's an odd but fitting name for him because he did disrobe after his teacher died, after Mayuzumi Roshi died, and took on and wanted to honor the life, the lay life. He felt that he could communicate the Zen teachers more skillfully if he embodied the role of a layperson. I think that's a powerful teaching. Still, while he was still wearing robes, immediately after Mayuzumi Roshi died, within a couple of years, he transmitted the Dharma with a Gyoku Roshi, Seishun Roshi, and myself. And what we found out was that for all his look of a raggedy old guy, he was extremely precise with the Soto procedures and the study text, extremely precise. He would catch any kind of wavering away from the original teachings, pointing out the slightest error in a liturgical document. And with his other hand, he was negotiating with builders and talking to street folks. And in particular, he always held up the text that we've been studying, Dogen's instructions to the cook. In fact, they pervade Bernie's biography. So the best book of is the one that I held up before, Instructions to the Cook, a Zen Master's Lessons in Living a Life That Matters. Now, he wrote it with Rick Fields, who was a wonderful writer. Also, there's an early book about Zen coming to America you might want to read called How the Swans Came to the Lake. A Narrative History of Buddhism in America. That's Rick. And they put this book together because Bernie was so appreciative of Dogen's teachings. So after he got the Grayston Family Inn started and the bakery that was subsidizing HIV/AIDS housing, Bernie began to turn his attention to working on all kinds of hatred and othering in the world. So I don't know if any of you participated, as I did for many years, in one of his retreats. There's street retreats that are still being offered by the Zen peacemakers. Auschwitz retreat, I attended that several times at Auschwitz, and that also is continuing every year. There was a retreat in Rwanda. It was I did not attend, but which was very powerful, that Bernie led. And annual Native American retreats, all which encourage an opening to listening to one another, to compassion, to understanding, and taking action in the sphere of community. So I always think of that third section in the Tenzo Kyokan in China, when Dogen comes on the cook at the monastery, an old man's out in the sun drying mushrooms, and he's sweating. Dogen says he's back bent like a bow in the scorching heat. And Dogen goes up to him and says, "Why not let somebody else do this?" And the cook replies, "Others are not myself." Dogen protests, "But the sun is so hot." And the old cook replies, "Until when should I wait?" This sounds so much to me like that well-known saying of Hillel the Elder, the great Jewish religious sage. "If I am not for myself, who will be for me?" And when I am myself, what am I? Or what am I? And if not now, when? Now, of course, I'm not going to try to unravel the various possible ways of understanding these statements by Hillel the Elder. I'll leave that to the generations and generations of Jewish commentators. But what I hear is this I of "I am not for myself," is the I of the great mind, the I of the wise mind, an I from which myself takes agency. And it sounds to me to be the same myself of the cooks. Others are not myself. I am one with everything, and I must act. Hillel's "if not now, when" is what I hear in the cooks. Until when should I wait? If not now, when? Until when shall you wait? So on Monday, we all return to our usual routines. Has anything changed for you? Will you maintain contact with the big I? That I that directs you to true agency in a world interconnected and suffering? Those wise ones, the cook, and Dogen and Hillel and Bernie are urging us to take heed. Take heed. Don't squander our lives. That's old cook drying mushrooms. Master Hillel encouraging us to actually inhabit our lives now and to live in the deepest wisdom, to live in the realization of our interconnectedness, our daishin, our great mind. And at the same time, our unique individual life, our kishin, our joyful mind. You could say these are all representations of each one of us, our own particular Dharma position. The intersection of our being and this time and these circumstances. Nahisi Coach says, don't say it's your fault, say it's your responsibility. I say it's our Dharma position, where we are right now. It's like intersecting points on a graph. Point where we act from, how we use our life, our practice, our study, our resources to act, to express, to care, to love in the world. There's no waiting for a dream. There's just meeting our life as it is now. So what I've learned through the years is that, we often start off studying the way for ourselves to ease our suffering. But if we're able to penetrate the mystery of self, we recognize that what we are doing is as the whole world, that our acts are caring for the whole world because we're not separate. We're not just caring for ourselves because our nature is not singular. We're like a little point on a brilliant array of points. A concentration of billions and billions of years of history, past points, future points that we cannot see, spreading out to the widest space that there is. This one Dharma point, this one, when she is awake, touches all the other Dharma points. In the instructions to the cook, it says, you should understand that there are foolish people who do not take care of themselves because they do not take care of others. And there are wise people who care for others just as they care for themselves. That last line, and there are wise people who care for others just as they care for themselves. So I'd like you to realize that our shuso, Mukei Shomon, who urge us to study Dogen and Bernie's instructions to the cook. It's not surprising to learn that he's on the board of the Zen Peacemakers. Bernie's final project, which is an international organization of Zen-based social action. Mukei has lived a life in many kitchens, and he now serves us at the Village Zendo as our head monk, as our shuso. You know, he's been a member of the Zendo for many years, but he has a very busy life. So some of you may have missed encountering him, particularly since on Sunday mornings, he was an Episcopal priest for 16 years and worked with a congregation in New Jersey. He'd come running from that service in the morning over to the path class in the afternoon. He's also a practicing psychoanalyst and a volunteer at Gay Men's Health Crisis. He has represented the Village Zendo in the Buddhist Council and is, of course, the co-leader of our People of Color Sangha. Perhaps you're now getting the connection between Dogen's instructions to the cook, Bernie Glassman's instructions to the cook, and our shuso, who is leading us during this retreat. So tonight we'll begin or this later afternoon, we'll begin our formal proceedings to honor him. We'll have a formal tea, which Joanne explained earlier. We all bring our own tea to Zoom and our own little cookie to Zoom. At that time, I'll give him a koan that he'll have to defend tomorrow. And that's, in the old days, we would call it Dharma combat, but now we call it Dharma dialogue, because it's much more a time to listen to the Dharma and see how it can affect your life and the life of those around you. And if you take in the teachings of the instructions to the cook and see how it's not one, it's everyone. So stay tuned to our activities later today. It's kind of a fun thing we do, a bizarre little tea that we have. And tomorrow, and be sure and sign up to ask a question and encourage Mukei. And then tomorrow we will have the shuso hosen service. So thank you, Mukei Shomon, for your efforts for us. And I offer us a verse for today. What are you cooking today? A quiet mind, a busy mind, a heart that aches, a heart that sings. There's room for it all in your kitchen mind, in your moment-to-moment life. Be well.